I got money on my mind. I'm just trying to get some dough. I ain't picking up my line unless it's money on the phone.
Yeah.
With mentioning the global perspective of things, I kind of want to move with your journey a little further too, Adrian. So like, I know that you started your career path was very different. Like you started off with the patent office, and then how'd you end up overseas and start working in these different areas like that?
And so, I mean, I've always been very curious, right? And so I got into the patent office from doing some contracting for a national lab in artificial intelligence while I was still in school. And from there, went to the patent office and still worked in artificial intelligence. While I was at the patent office and still sticking with my main theme of always wanting to have something that I owned myself, I started in being a loan officer, and that was in 05 and 06. And I got out of that just in the nick of time because there's a lot of signs and writing on the wall that, people being pretty reckless with mortgages. And because one of the biggest lenders at the time that I was working with were Countrywide and Washington Mutual. And we know those two don't even exist today with the pick and pay mortgages. And so I got out of that because I didn't want to end up in jail or, part of some grand jury. And from there, I got into Forex. And so I met some guy and he was talking about Forex. I was like, Forex, what is that? And I'd heard of stocks before. So I got into Forex and did pretty well with it, and eventually started my own asset management firm and did that from 06 to 2012 and the patent office at the same time. And was just, I was spent. And so I ended up saying, hey, I'm going to take some time off, go overseas for a little bit and, see how that is. I'd already been to like Vietnam and Cambodia previously. And I was like, well, let me go back over there and see how things are. And, what was going to be just a 2-3 month trip turned into a couple of years of me just traveling and seeing what the scene was on the ground in Southeast Asia, Australia. And then, just did that and, really got to see what China's influence was on the Western world in Australia, New Zealand, and other places, and, how they're impacting economies, housing markets, et cetera. And that's what pushed me overseas and, just kept traveling since then. So.
Can you speak to some of those things that you learned, like the impact and like just the influence?
Well, I think the influence is a lot more than people know it is coming from the U.S. Because you don't really see it. I mean, you see most Americans get their news from television, right? Mm-hmm. And so by default, I feel like a lot of Americans are almost afraid to go, overseas, or they think, hey, I'm in the best country in the world, so why would I go anywhere else? Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of it is media programming, because once you start getting on the ground in these other countries and, setting up businesses there, working there with different people and industries, you realize that there is a lot of opportunity and things are a lot different overseas. Like, I mean, starting a business in some countries is way easier than in the US. Like their taxes and stuff may be different, but it's a lot better for a lot of different reasons. And it's better in a way that helps people on the lower end. For example, in like Vietnam, they're not, to get a food cart, for example, or to sell, trinkets to tourists and stuff, they're not hassling the locals for, where's your permit to do this? And, you got to shut down by this time. I mean, pretty much everything is at your own risk. You start a business, it succeeds or fails, that's just on you. And so even with how things are even policed there, like the police are even different. Like, of course, you don't want to be doing any crimes, but the way that they treat the people is more like, it's less adversarial, I'd say. And, while overseas, I ain't experienced like any racism. I mean, if anything, I'd say they treated me like a king, because it's so rare for people to see Americans, number one, but then Black Americans. So, and I mean, I met some amazing people that I'm still in touch with them today. And, every now and then they may come to the States and we may catch up, or I may go to see them. So, I mean, it was great. I mean, there was more than a few times where people would want to take a picture with, me and their kids, because, they've never seen a Black person before, invite me. I got invited to weddings. Like, it was awesome. So, yeah.
They wanted to take a picture just because they had never seen a Black person before.
I'm trying to tell you, like, I would go places and like there'd be like crowds like following me. They'd be wanting to pay for my meals to learn, like, hey, can you teach my kid English? Like, I tutor people in English. I don't know. No, I speak English, but I mean, it's far enough to like teach people. But I mean, people, just talk to my kid in English for a while so they can get better at English. And, little things like that, going to weddings and like being a part of like wedding parties and stuff. Like, it was, I had a great time. So.
And that sounds like you really got to indulge in the culture also, though. Like,
oh man, when I travel, I don't stay in like, tourist areas. I purposely don't, I try to avoid tourist areas. And then, like, for example, like I stayed in Australia for over a year. I was in Hanoi, Vietnam for about 3-4 months. Been to Bali a few times. So, I mean, when I go places, like, I'm like there, like, walking down the street, like I pick up the language. I mean, I still speak some Vietnamese, not very much, but like, I can still say hello when I go to like, the Asian market to pick up some coffee or something like that. And yeah, but once you're on the ground, like that's real like immersion therapy, you really pick up the culture. So
you get a real perspective of what it's actually like to be from there.
Yeah.
In my line, brother. Oh, no, I'll let you finish, my brother.
When you see how people live, I mean, it's not really that different. Like,
my line brother, he's doing not a study. What he's doing like a mission trip. He's doing a mission trip. And he went to Cambodia for a little while. He's currently like in the Caribbean, but he was telling me like you said, just picking up on the language. He was like, bro, forget learning like from an app or something. He's like, man, this is survival. He's like, either you gonna figure out how to get around, or you just gonna be lost.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like that, especially in scenarios like, where's the bathroom at, I want some water, like, or what is this food that I'm eating, Those are basic things, and like you need to know how to say that. Thank you, like, can I get some help? Like, where is this? How to read a map in another language? Like, that's a whole nother scenario. So
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's true too.
And so, I mean, because I ride motorcycles. And so whenever I travel, I usually rent a motorcycle. And so, you're on a map in the middle of nowhere and you got to figure that out quick. So, yeah.
You can't even read the road signs if you can't understand the language.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, like when you under that pressure, though, you got to figure that out and be like, where is this symbol at? Okay, I've been on this for about, this amount of time. So you need to know how to get back home. I mean, you don't want to be going too far off the main roads, but at the same time, knowing how to read, just basic how to read a map, how to recognize different symbols in different languages. I mean, you pick up on those things, direction that you're going in, being able to tell like, what's north, south, east, and west, not really based on a compass, but just like where the sun's at, whether it's at your back or things like that. You pick up on these things because it's a lot of things that you think you may have forgotten come back to you very quick when you're pretty much in a survival situation. I mean, it's not stressful or anything, but your brain starts putting pieces together.
Yeah, because you don't want to be lost in a foreign country that you don't speak the language and all that stuff the best.
But I think that's powerful too, though. Like to just thinking about how Americanized we are and how sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't need to learn that language. Like they in America, like. But you don't put yourself in that situation where you're in a whole foreign situation and you don't know anything. A lot of people, oh, don't speak Spanish, like speak American to me. No, you need to put yourself in the position of someone who doesn't understand. This is life or death for me. Like, I need to know how to go to the restroom or something. So I think that's very interesting that you got to experience that life from that point of view.
And I kind of wanted to ask you, Adrian, like with that, how did that help you in business? Because I know you said like whenever you went travel, it was to kind of decompress from business. So how did that help out?
I mean, I feel like I connected more I connected with people on a deeper level because it wasn't necessarily based on just my American perspective. It was based on having lived in these different places and seen how different economies, like, wealthy is all the way down to like dealing with trash, like people that literally pick through trash for a living, and interacting with these people and seeing how the different pieces connect together. I mean, it's definitely given me a much greater appreciation for small business, like not just in the US, but around the globe, because it's not just in the US where, small business is the main driver of the economy, but around the world. Because if you think about a lot of places, there is no job that you go to after school. You just do whatever your family has done for probably generations. Like, and that is their business, but we don't even think about it like that because in the US, we're so used to, oh, well, you leave home and go to a job and work for someone else. But other places, whatever their family does is that's just it. That's just going to be your destiny, unless you choose to do something else, if you have that option. So, I mean, it definitely gave me a lot more appreciation for business and just people in general, because knowing that, people come from different backgrounds that are so much more diverse than just the range that we have here. So, I mean, and what we think is like poor and, not having resources is basically spoiled and obese compared to the rest of the world. So, I mean, and you see it in like the little things that most people ignore on a daily basis. And like the average height of people is different just due to nutritional levels and genetics,
You got something, Jared?
Yeah, and I wanted to ask kind of something you referenced earlier. You said something about it being easier to start a business in some places. I wanted to ask, like, did you start some businesses, like some foreign entity businesses?
And so I do own businesses outside the US. And so I can't really say too much about that because the way that I structured my business is to kind of minimize my tax exposure.
Gotcha.
And so
I understand.
Yeah.
We ain't got to go too deep into it, my brother.
we ain't them folks.
So I'll just leave it at that. I will say that if you want to minimize your tax exposure, there are some very favorable countries to do that in. So as a hedge to, also as a hedge personally for whatever you have here in the US. And it's not very expensive. I mean, a lot of people think like, this can may be expensive, but especially if you have businesses that generate income overseas, there's no reason to bring those profits back on shore and, pay the US government for something that they had no influence in the first place. So.
See, I never even thought about it like that, my brother.
I just kept thinking on it. Like the US, so with the foreign entities, is it possible for like you to still transact in the United States with those?
Yeah, money is money.
Like, are there like when you have a foreign business, like there's certain like regulations or anything that you got to jump through or anything like that to do business here?
No, not really. I mean, think about it this way, right? So Facebook is headquartered in the US. However, they have a lot of their operations internationally are based in Ireland. And the reason why they're based in Ireland is because Ireland is a lower tax locale than the US. And so any profits that they make overseas, instead of repatriating them back to the US and having to pay income taxes on those profits, they can keep them outside the US, and then they don't have to pay US taxes for those profits that they earned overseas. And so what then they can do is, say overseas they made more money than they made in the US, the overseas entity can give the US entity a loan between the two, and it's not considered income that's taxable between the two. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do legally that are like that if you have businesses overseas. And so, for example, I mean, I have inventory in about 13 different countries, and I sell books in 40 different countries. And so I don't want to pay more than I have to pay in taxes in the US if I don't have to. And then too, there are other benefits to having entities overseas, because US has very, in certain areas, they have very high bars as far as taxes and liabilities and things like that. And some countries and businesses won't even do business with you if you're a US based person or a US based entity. And so having an overseas branch opens up an entire world of opportunities that neither US companies or US citizens have access to, as far as investments in marketplaces, companies that will do business with you, etc.
Man, hey, you just bust my head with that one. I never would have known that's like how it's moving on that level. But man,
once again, international business don't teach you this shit.
Yeah, I mean, one good example is, I imagine you guys have heard of AliExpress, correct?
Yeah.
And so you can't sell on AliExpress unless you have a business in mainland China, Italy, Spain, Russia, or Turkey. That's 5 countries in the entire world that you have to be in before you can sell on that marketplace.
Wow.
And see, most people don't know that. And so they're talking about a platform that makes billions of dollars that Americans or American companies cannot sell on unless they have an overseas entity.
And we can buy from them.
They'll take your money quick. And see, I mean, and little things like that is what people don't really realize, because that's that American brain. When you see that globally, you realize that, oh, wow, the American pot is massive, but the global pot, and that's how you make money around the clock.
I got money on my mind, I'm just trying to get some dough. I ain't picking up my line unless it's money on the phone.